with some light rain by the end of the afternoon. Similar temperatures to Tuesday, not far from average for the time of year, and it does brighten up in the north and the west by the end of the afternoon, with a mixture once again of sunny spells and showers. But the showers fade away through the evening, so for many, clear spells again on Wednesday night. But with a keen breeze, it's not going to be quite as cool overnight. And then Thursday brings with it more rain or showers, another blustery day, but the weather settles down on Friday and the weekend.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, and the left fights the right, and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome to Tuday's edition of On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about food prices and the prospect of the Royal Navy using ships to help break what the UN's calling a Russian blockade, preventing grain ships leaving Ukrainian ports in a bid to bring down global food prices. Plus, we hear from the boss of the brand new Elizabeth line, crossing which stretches from Reading to Essex across London. More infrastructure for the south. When are we going to get Northern Powerhouse Rail? On the Money, after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. A convicted drug dealer has been jailed for life for murdering his partner's son. Nathaniel Pope will serve at least 24 years for killing 3-year-old Kamani Watson-Darby at their home in West Bromwich in June of 2018. The court was told that Kamani had his ribs crushed with force similar to that caused by a car crash. His mother, Alicia Watson's been jailed for 11 years for child cruelty and for causing or allowing his death. Energy regulator Ofgem expects the energy price cap to rise by more than 40% in October. Appearing before a committee of MPs, the chief executive, Jonathan Brearley, said households could be paying £2,800 a year. He says Russia's invasion of Ukraine means gas prices are highly volatile, and at times reached 10 times their normal level.
Now, I know this is a very distressing time for customers, but I do need to be clear with this committee, with customers and with the government about the likely price implications for October. Therefore, later today, I will be writing to the Chancellor to give him our latest estimates of the price cap uplift. Now, this is uncertain. We are only part way through the price cap window, but we are expecting a price cap in October in the region of £2,800.
Downing Street is reportedly expecting to receive Sue Gray's report into lockdown parties tomorrow. Boris Johnson held a cabinet meeting this morning as he faces fresh questions about whether he lied to Parliament. Leaked pictures published by ITV News show him raising a glass at a leaving do in November 2020. He told MPs there was no party that day. West Ham defender Kurt Zouma has admitted to kicking and slapping his pet cat. We can find out more by going live to Thames Magistrate Court to find out more. Our reporter Ellie Costello is there. Ellie, explain to us what happened.
Kurt Zouma's young 7-year-old son.
Well, Rosie, Kurt Zouma was actually in the same dock as his brother Yuan Zouma this morning, where they both pled guilty to offences under the Animal Welfare Act. These were charges brought about by the RSPCA. Kurt Zouma, the West Ham defender, he pled guilty to 2 charges causing the unnecessary suffering to an animal, namely kicking a cat in the abdomen and slapping a cat around the face. This was seen in a viral video that was released earlier this year. His younger brother, Yuan Zouma, who plays for Dagenham and Redbridge Football Club, he pled guilty to aiding and abetting the unnecessary suffering of an animal. He actually filmed that viral video and posted it to his Snapchat account. And prosecution pointed to the fact that that video was 41 seconds in length. They said it was a deliberate attempt to cause suffering and not a fleeting action. The defence lawyer attempted to mitigate by saying that both brothers had received racist abuse and threats to their life. He also pointed at Kurt Zouma receiving a hefty fine and not being called up to play for France since the incident. Well, the judge has now adjourned the case for sentencing until June the 1st.
Ellie, thank you very much. The Prime Minister says he has full confidence in the most senior civil servant at the Foreign Office, despite calls for his resignation. MPs are demanding that Sir Philip Barton quit over what they say were deep failures of leadership during the evacuation of Kabul. Sir Philip stayed on holiday until the operation in Afghanistan was completed last August. The Foreign Affairs Committee says he showed a determination to avoid unearthing the facts. Climate change protesters have interrupted Shell's annual general meeting with people, some of them gluing themselves to seats. Chairman Sir Andrew Mackenzie was forced to pause the event at Central Hall in Westminster when demonstrators stormed the room. Well, he says it could take hours for police to remove them. The oil giant's hoping to resume the meeting later this afternoon. The World Health Organization says the monkeypox outbreak is containable and they're working with officials to try to contain the spread. 131 cases have been confirmed in 19 countries. 57 cases are in the UK. The UK Health Security Agency says it's the first time there's been suspected human-to-human transmission in Britain. Officials believe the risk to the population is low, but they're keeping it under review. Over 130,000 journeys have already been made on Crossrail's Elizabeth line after it opened to the public this morning. Hundreds of enthusiasts from across the country queued in central London, hoping to be among some of the first passengers. Well, London's Mayor Sadiq Khan described it as a game changer that will benefit the whole country.
One of the lessons we've got to learn is don't stop now. Invest in the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, because we can do this well now. We've learned the lessons. This project will contribute more than £42 billion every year towards our nation's economy. It's already created 70,000 jobs across the country.
You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Liam and On the Money.
And coming up on the money today, food prices are spiralling, with surveys suggesting more than a quarter of households are now struggling to make ends meet. Supermarket sales are falling, but discounters like Lidl and Aldi are adding market share. Should we be using the Royal Navy to smash what the UN calls a Russian blockade of grain ships stuck in Ukrainian ports? How high could food prices go, and what should the government now do to help millions of cash-strapped households cope? We hold a detailed discussion. Plus, each day on The Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview. Today we meet premium soft drinks brand Belvoir Farm. This Leicestershire-based company tells us how they pick hundreds of thousands of tons of elderflowers to flavour their drinks each year, why they haven't changed their family recipe in over 4 decades, and the dispute over how we should pronounce their name. That's later in the show. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. I'll read some of your messages later in the show, so stay with us. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. Food prices are soaring at their fastest rate for 13 years. Over the last month alone, the prices of fresh meat, dairy products, dog food and savoury snacks have risen particularly sharply, with food inflation hitting 7% in May. That's according to the consultancy Kantar. War in Ukraine is the most immediate cause. Ukraine and Russia account for around a quarter of global wheat exports and a third of all fertiliser production, raising costs for farmers everywhere. Food prices were already high as the world economy was struggling to recover from lockdown, but this conflict has sent prices soaring. Shoppers are now responding, with UK supermarket sales down almost 5% over the last month. While Tesco, Asda and Morrisons have seen revenues fall, discounters like Lidl and Aldi have increased sales and market share. Across Britain, farmers are seeing much higher costs for fuel, fertiliser and animal feedstock, all of which pushes up food prices, of course. As grain prices soar, poultry farmers are spending much more on feed, as are dairy and pig farmers, again generating cost pressures in the food supply chain. And Western leaders are growing increasingly concerned that wheat produced in Ukraine isn't being delivered to global markets, again pushing prices up. Millions of tons of wheat produced in Ukraine and Russia is ordinarily shipped out via Black Sea ports, including Odessa and Chornomorsk. Russian warships are blockading these export routes, says the United Nations, preventing grain ships crossing the Black Sea to reach the Mediterranean and on to global markets. Western leaders are now talking about using warships to escort Ukrainian grain ships breaking through the Russian blockade. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the Royal Navy could get involved. European wheat prices are around 75% up since January, which is serious, of course. But the grain stuck in Ukraine, ready to go, amounts to an estimated 20 million tonnes. It sounds a lot, but that's only around 1% of global annual grain production. Sending in the Navy, a high-stakes tactic, of course, is unlikely then to bring down wheat and grain prices any time soon. And that's our On the Money question today. How should the government tackle soaring food costs? Here at On the Money, we have grown-up conversations with people who really know their stuff. And just before I introduce my panel, let me say that the boss of Ofgem, the energy regulator, is going to tell the Chancellor, we've just heard, that the energy price cap, which went up, of course, from £1,277 in October last year to £1,970 in April this year, the Ofgem boss is saying that energy price cap could now go up to £2,800, another £800 on top of the recent increase. So let's mull on that as we meet my panel today. I'm delighted to have Rory Stone. He's a cheesemaker at Highland Fine Cheeses in Tain in Scotland. Great to have some Scots on the panel. And also Andrew Jurett joins On the Money again, chairman of the British Egg Industry Council. And Glenn Wheeler, he's chef at 28 The Hollow in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland. We're right across the country today. Glenn, great to have you on the show too. You featured before. And here in the studio, another friend of the show, Victoria Scholar, Head of Investment at Interactive Investor. Let's go to you first, Andrew. We've talked about high costs for egg producers recently. I think we had you on the show about 6 weeks ago. As grain prices rise, the price of literally chicken feed rises, the price of eggs rise, a very important source of protein for the population.
Indeed, and since that last programme, the price of wheat, unfortunately, has only gone upwards by another about £20 a tonne. I think the price today is about £340 a tonne. And animal feed represents about 60 or 70% of the cost of producing a dozen eggs. So clearly any increase in that is very, very significant. What the producers are saying is that they are, to recover these cost increases, they need something like 40 pence a dozen. There have been some price movements, but certainly that has not yet been reflected in the retail prices that you see for eggs. I think eggs have gone up a little bit, so there's some movement, but certainly not enough from the point of view of producers. And the real worry here is that egg production is a long-term cycle. And what we've started to see is a trend towards a reduction in placings of day-old chicks. Now, a chick, when it's placed at day-old, doesn't produce eggs until it's about 5 months old. But so far this year, 1 month of chick placings alone doesn't really mean anything. But in the 4 months at the start of this year, chick placings are down by 15%. Now, that implies a clear reduction in the size of the national flock as we go forward. And that could be a problem because even with a slight increase of the cost of eggs, they are still an exceptionally high quality protein, and it's the cheapest protein you can put on a plate. You can make a meal out of eggs and it'll beat any cost of meat or anything else. So, even with a little bit of increase, we need it. And in the cost of living crisis that we're in now, you would think that an economic food product like eggs should be very strongly featured, so that egg production needs to be protected, I think.
Let's go to you, Rory Stone. We've heard from the egg makers. You're obviously involved in the dairy industry, a very reputable cheesemaker up there in Tain in Scotland. Tell us how your costs have gone up. The cost not just of making your fine cheese, but also distributing, transporting your fine cheese.
It's just incredible how everything is contrived and conspired over the last while to push prices up. I mean, obviously, it starts with energy. It starts with fuel and oil, and that feeds into transport. It feeds into what we're paying for to heat the dairy, to run pasteurizers and pumps. But it's phenomenal how everything is so interlinked, and some of the most effective and efficient dairy farmers in the country will be milking 3 times a day to get the maximum return from their cows. One of the problems is they cannot get staff on the farm. So a lot of them have just said, well, we'll go down to 2 milkings a day, which inevitably means that they'll be producing less milk. That, of course, affects the price as well. So we're in a luckier position in some respects because we're producing what we'd like to think is a value-added product, and therefore we can make a price rather than take a price. But there's huge resistance from the big retailers to allow price increases, and they are claiming that they're trying to protect the public from inflationary pressure by refusing to accept price increases.
Very, very interesting. Let's go to Glenn Wheeler over there in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland. Glenn, I met you before Christmas when we came to Northern Ireland, GBNews Northern Ireland Week. We had a really interesting discussion. We dined at your fabulous restaurant, 28 The Hollow. You're a very well-known chef, not just across Northern Ireland, but the entire island of Ireland. So much has happened since we last met, Glenn. Tell us about your cost base. Tell us about the extent to which you're able to pass on those higher costs to your customers, or are you trying to absorb those costs to keep them coming through the door?
Well, we are trying to absorb as much as we can. We're obviously just coming out of a pandemic, so we have to be careful. We're glad to get any customers in the door, and we're glad to be back open again. But we've seen some increases, like nothing really dramatic. Fish is probably my biggest increase. Normally where I would have been paying maybe 8, 9, 10 a kilo for maybe the likes of cod or hakes, went up to nearly 16, 17. In some weeks, £18 a kilo for hake, which is crazy. But we just have to kind of adapt. We have to work on menus pretty well. Dairy's definitely dairy. Every month, I'm almost getting an email from my dairy supplier with an increase on milk, increase on butter. So we have to work it pretty well. Obviously, a lot of it's down to fuel, but like this guy said, I think a lot of it's down to staffing as well. I spoke to my fisherman, and he told me, he says, we can't get fishermen to go out anymore, so there's less fishermen going out, less boats coming in. So then whatever's on the boats is in high demand, so they can add the price up to whatever they want.
Victoria, let's turn to you. You're obviously, you look at financial markets very closely, at Interactive investor. We have seen wheat prices spike. We've seen grain prices spike. We've seen all kinds of commodities spike. Do you see any sense in which the clouds are parting? Do you see any kind of any sunlight on the horizon when it comes to these, what we call soft commodities?
I mean, it's a difficult one to call because it's been driven by, of course, firstly, us coming out of the pandemic and that big imbalance between supply and demand. And then those price rises have become a lot more acute this year with the war in Ukraine. So a lot of it depends on that geopolitical uncertainty and how that plays out and whether or not we can get some of that additional supply from key suppliers like Russia and Ukraine. But I think what's really concerning is when you look at the trajectory in terms of the forecasters for inflation and growth, because if you think of the IMF, for example, which is a big forecaster for these macroeconomic trends, we've seen big growth downgrades since the start of the year. We've seen big inflation upgrades. So it's really the pace of change that's really quite worrying. And that could potentially lead us to have much higher interest rates more quickly. And that, of course, is going to exacerbate the cost of living crisis.
And imagine what would happen if around the world went pictures of NATO warships, butting up against Russian warships as they try and get grain vessels through the Black Sea. I mean, what would that do to financial markets?
Yeah, and also supermarkets. I mean, we saw the sort of run on toilet roll during the pandemic. We could see people start to try and, buy in bulk a lot of these goods, which again could exacerbate some of those price rises. But it's these consumer staples, which we can't live without, that are going up much faster than inflation, because our inflation rate is now at 9%. It's forecast to go to 10%. I think that's possibly quite conservative. But some of the key things that we depend on to survive are going up by 20% or more. And that's the real danger here.
And of course, it's bread, it's pasta, it goes into animal feedstock, and that takes us back to the farmers in this cycle. Let's go back to you, Andrew Jorrett. You are chairman of the British Egg Industry Council. You talked earlier about how egg production, it's a long cycle. Are you seeing your members now, if you like, lowering their production because their costs are going up? Are we baking in to the farming production cycle, whether it's arable crops, whether it's animal husbandry, whether it's egg production, sustained price rises because farmers, if you like, are kind of reining in production given their soaring cost base?
Yes, we are seeing a reduction. The reduction really comes in the long-term nature. It's a reduction in people putting down chicks. It's also, there are pullet rearers who take the chicks and rear them on to sell them on then to the laying farm customers at about 5 months of age. And what they're reporting is a lack of commitment from laying farmers to place future orders for chicks. So all of this is looking towards a smaller flock in the future, and therefore less domestic egg production. And at a time when, even with a little bit more cost, eggs are such good value for money, very high quality protein, it's the cheapest protein meal you could put on the plate, you would think that egg producers should be protected. But that's not what we're seeing yet, that's for sure.
Go to work on an egg, as they used to say on the telly when I was a lad. Don't go anywhere, because after the break, we will keep this important discussion going on food prices, on the prospect of the Royal Navy on the Black Sea breaking through what's being called a Russian blockade of grain ships. Do send in your thoughts, opinions, ideas. Are you seeing rises in prices at the supermarket? Let us know. What do you think the government should do to help? Stay with us. You're on the money.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. We're talking about soaring food prices, food inflation at a 13-year high. Supermarket sales down, but not for the discounters, Aldi and Lidl. They're gaining market share. I'm still with my expert panel. Let's go to Rory Stone up there in Tain in Scotland. You are a cheesemaker at Highland Fine Cheeses. Rory, I mentioned at the top of the show some breaking news that the head of Ofgem, the energy regulator, is going to tell Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, that energy price cap, that cap on average household utility bills, could go up from where it currently is, just below £2,000 to just below £3,000, a huge increase. Now, of course, as a business, you don't enjoy any protection from an energy price cap. But if the head of Ofgem's saying that, that does suggest that your bills are going to go up too. How important is your energy bill to the sustainability of your business? How do you fancy another 50% odd increase?
I don't really even want to think about it. I mean, it is punishing. We are looking for so many ways of reducing energy input. Manufacturing, cheese manufacturing, does require a lot of energy, whether it's refrigeration or heating milk. We do burn a lot of units. So it will have a very, very real effect. And that will, we've staved off from pushing prices up until now, the 1st of July. We've announced to everybody that there'll be a minimum 10% increase. And I think that I said earlier that some of the supermarkets have been resistant towards this because they feel that their claim is that they're taking inflation out of the game for the consumer. But they're now having to accept that products are just going to go up. And you can see in major retailers there's less on offer. There are some bare shelves. And I do think the major UK retailers are really struggling to identify how to compete with Aldi and Lidl, who are still doing a phenomenal job in the UK market.
From Ross County in Scotland to Enniskillen in Fermanagh in Northern Ireland. Glenn Wheeler, you're running a restaurant in Enniskillen, very reputable restaurant as well. Energy arrangements are slightly different in Northern Ireland, but you are exposed to wholesale price increases too. If we've got the head of Ofgem saying that the energy price cap's going to go up from just under £2,000 to just under £3,000. That's going to affect your fuel bill. What could that do to your business?
It's so hard to know. I suppose one way what we have looked at is maybe reducing hours that we're open, maybe bring it from a 5-day week down to a 4-day week. We have to adapt. We have to come up with something. Our electric, the majority of my kitchen is electric. Lucky enough, it's all induction, it's not gas. But the price of fuel alone at the minute, with supplies coming in and everything, it's just gone through the roof.
Victoria, you and I spoke last week. India, a major grain exporter, banned exports because it's worried about its own food security. That's going to put wheat prices up. On the other hand, some other news out today is that the government borrowing figures here in the UK are slightly better than expected. So maybe the government could do more. Maybe Rishi Sunak could splash the cash to help the now quarter of families, according to the Cantor consultancy, who are, quote, struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah, well, that's the hope. We had public sector net borrowing figures for April that improved versus March, and it's partly a quirk of inflation because that means that prices are rising, so people are having to spend more.
VAT receipts go up, right?
So tax receipts go up, and the other reason why we saw that improvement is because if we look at what the government was spending this time last year versus now, clearly it hasn't got the furlough scheme, stamp duty holiday, all these fiscal stimulus programmes that were in place to support households through a really, really difficult time around this time last year. A lot of that pressure has been alleviated this year. So overall, the public finances are slightly improving. So arguably, that gives the government a little bit more fiscal room and wiggle room to try and carry out some of those expansional measures that might help with the cost of living crisis. But one of the difficult things is that with sort of expansional fiscalism or government spending, that itself can be inflationary.
It can.
So it's a very, very difficult conundrum, and the Bank of England, the government clearly wants to keep inflation under control. It doesn't want to exacerbate those problems and worsen that affordability crisis.
I did want to put that to you, Victoria. Ordinarily, if the government borrows and spends more, the markets usually think, oh, that's not very good, and the sterling falls, and But in this situation, the market might feel the government should be doing something. The government's being too contractionary, too mean, if you like, with the public finances, too cautious. Is there a sense of that?
Well, I think it's a difficult one because clearly the government wants to help with the cost of living crisis, but at the same time, it doesn't want to make inflation even worse than it already is. So it's treading a very, very fine line there.
Let's go back to you, Andrew Jowett at the British Egg Industry Council. What's your pitch to Boris Johnson, to Rishi Sunak? Clearly, you have oversight of a really important industry. Eggs are a hugely important source of protein, often for low and middle-income households, by the way. What do you need to make sure egg production stays where it needs to be, so you are actually helping to reduce inflation rather than adding to inflation?
I think there's really two things. I think we need to see prices in the shops reflecting the reality of the cost of production. Otherwise, we'll just see a decline in the amount of eggs. But then I strongly think that as a nation, we should be helping those who are less well off to afford the food that they need, whether that's done by additional amounts on universal credit or things like that. But clearly, it's wrong to let the poorest actually struggle the most.
What's your pitch, Rory? What do you need to keep Highland Fine Cheeses working, ticking over, growing, employing people, generating tax revenue, adding to the economy?
The growth is not an issue. I mean, we're up 25% year on year, and I'm a bit fearful about it, to be honest, because I just didn't expect it. But we've actually got the buyer from Aldi coming up on day after tomorrow to talk about more and more opportunities. So there's definitely buyers in multiple retailers are having to do the job as described on their office door. They're having to get out there to find choice to get more stuff onto the shelf because it's not being imported into the country. So it's a quite a sort of schizophrenic situation. I don't look to government to do anything. I think we're just going to have to, the price will go up, full stop. Food is going to cost more. But traditionally, we've paid far too little for our food, and we've become a hugely wasteful nation. My parents both fought through the Second War, and there was nothing thrown away from the fridge. It was all used. So I think we do need to help the people who suffer the most, who are on the lowest available income. But that should be about getting back to using ingredients and raw materials and not using that precious cash on ready-made meals and some of the most highly processed foods, which are just bad, full stop.
Glenn Wheeler from Scotland, back to Fermanagh in Northern Ireland. Now, I know your restaurant. I've been privileged to eat there. It's a very prominent restaurant on the high street there in Enniskillen. I know you're very close to your local community. It's where you're from. We've just heard there an interesting sense of how consumers are changing. Are you feeling that too? Do you think people are changing their behaviour? Do you think people are really budgeting? Do you think people really fear in terms of this cost of living crisis? What's your perspective as somebody who's running a restaurant that really, it's there when people want to treat themselves, isn't it? It's a kind of, it's an experience to eat at your restaurant, not necessarily an everyday occurrence.
It's quite hard, and I don't mean to keep referring back to it, but we've just literally came out of a pandemic, so people did rush back out again. They wanted to go out for their nice meal, their nice glass of wine. But we are starting to see this slowly, like the prices are going up. We have kept our prices as tight as we can, hoping that, we don't want to, we're here to make a living, obviously, but we still want a busy restaurant. Weekends are still doing very good. Midweek is slightly quieter. But I totally agree with what Rory has just said. I think we need to educate people maybe on the likes of food, on maybe utilising the whole vegetable, not just, the prime end of it or whatever. But I think we need to maybe stop, pause and look at just where we're at with food. What's going in the bin every week? Why is it going in the bin? What can be done with that? And we want to cook for people, but we want to educate people as well on the food end of it, that we're not wasting.
Well, thanks to all my guests today. An important discussion. What can the government do to help rein in soaring food costs? It's not just a domestic, it's a geopolitical situation with the prospect of the Royal Navy trying to block what the UN's calling a blockade of ships leaving Ukraine full of grain across the Black Sea. Thank you to Rory Stone, cheesemaker at Highland Fine Cheeses in Tain, Scotland. Thank you to Andrew Jarrett, joining us from Nottinghamshire. He's chairman of the British Egg Industry Council. Glenn Wheeler, chef at 28 The Hollow in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland. Great to have you on the show again, Glenn. And indeed, Victoria Scholar, Head of Investment at Interactive Investor. Thank you for your expertise. As ever, this is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, it's today's Money Talks interview with Belvoir. You won't want to miss it. They're the drinks brand operating over 4,000 acres of Leicestershire countryside, and they pick an awful lot of elderflower. That's after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:34. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. The energy regulator Ofgem expects the energy price cap to rise by more than 40% in October. Chief Executive Jonathan Brearley says households could be paying £2,800 a year because the war in Ukraine means gas prices are highly volatile. Convicted drug dealer Nathaniel Pope has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 24 years for murdering his partner's 3-year-old son. The court was told that Kamani Watson Darby had his ribs crushed at his home in West Bromwich, with force similar to that caused by a car crash. His mother, Alicia Watson, has been jailed for 11 years for child cruelty and for causing or allowing his death. Downing Street is reportedly expecting to receive Sue Gray's report into lockdown parties tomorrow. Boris Johnson is facing fresh questions about whether he lied to Parliament. Leaked pictures published by ITV News show him raising a glass at a leaving do in November 2020. He had told MPs there was no party that day. West Ham footballer Kurt Zouma has admitted kicking and slapping his pet cat. Appearing in court, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts under the Animal Welfare Act. The 27-year-old was forced to apologise after video of the incident was shared online by his younger brother. And over 130,000 journeys have already been made on Crossrail's Elizabeth line after it opened to the public this morning. Hundreds of enthusiasts from around the country queued in central London hoping to be among the first passengers. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan described it as a game changer that will benefit the whole country. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.249 to the dollar and 1.166 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,487 and 27 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money. Now, it may be 3.5 years late, but the much-anticipated Elizabeth Line is finally open. The new rail line connects Reading in Berkshire's Thames Valley to the west of London, crossing the capital to Shenfield in Essex in the east, and will serve an estimated 200 million passengers a year. Many commuters will find their journey times cut now that this 72-mile line is open. And our London reporter Alice Porter is live from Woolwich.
Hello there, good afternoon. Yes, it's a very exciting day for people in London because we have 10 brand new stations which have opened on behalf and to cater for the Elizabeth Line. And that's going to increase rail capacity in London by 10%. So there's absolutely sort of extraordinary figures there. In terms of what that means for commuters, as you were saying there, many people are finding their commute time halved. I travelled to Woolwich from Paddington. Now, normally that would involve a couple of changes. It would take about an hour, but it in fact took about just half an hour. So it really is a huge improvement for many people commuting, not just into London, but into areas like Essex and to Berkshire as well. I was speaking with Howard Smith, who's the director of the Elizabeth Line earlier, and I asked him about the significance of the opening today, and this is what he had to say to me.
It's absolutely tremendous. I was on the first train out of Paddington this morning at 6:30 to actually hear people cheering as they come down into a railway station, to cheer as the train leaves. You know, tremendous. It's what London needs. It adds to capacity, reduces journey times, it saves people money. So a really, really important day, really exciting day, really pleased to be part of it. So it's a really fearsomely complicated piece of infrastructure. So tunnelling, then fitting out the systems, including things like signalling, bringing the trains in. So it took a little longer to bring all of the pieces together, but today, I think of all days, we can really see that it was worth the effort. It is absolutely tremendous. Well, I've worked on railways, I've worked on projects, I've worked in London for several decades. I think the history shows that we do actually move on, we do invest, we do improve the infrastructure. The timing, sometimes less certain, but in terms of the direction of travel, if you'll excuse the pun, absolutely clear, and we look forward to continuing to build up London as a city, build infrastructure, add to capacity, save people time. That's what it's all about.
That was Howard Smith speaking to me there, the director of the Elizabeth line. Now, of course, lots of good things to say there, but of course, this has been immensely behind schedule and hugely over budget. It was meant to be £15 billion, and it's now come out at a whopping £19 billion in money. Now, to put that into context, that is double the amount of money that was spent in London hosting the Olympics. So I think that gives an impression there of how much money has been spent. And of course, it was meant to finish in 2018. It is 3.5 years late. And of course, it's still not quite finished yet. We've got in autumn, the eastern and the western branches are going to be connecting to allow people to continuously move through and not have to change in central London. We still don't have the Bond Street station is still not fully up and running yet. So there's still a lot to do despite this 3.5-year delay. But there is no doubting the immense success of the Elizabeth line. I mean, there was a huge rush of joy at 6:30 this morning. People boarded the train, and the connectivity is absolutely brilliant. It's going to make an enormous difference, not just to the capital, but to the wider UK economy as well, because it's meant to bring in £42 billion to the UK economy. So still a long way to go until it's finally complete. But I think so far it's fair to say that the Elizabeth line has been something of a success.
Nice one, Alice. That's Alice Porter, our London reporter. I have to say, as I am a Londoner, you can tell by the way I talk, and as a Londoner, I'm happy that there's the Elizabeth line. It's an incredible piece of infrastructure. But as a UK citizen, I want more infrastructure in the north. I want Northern Powerhouse Rail, linking together our big northern cities. That's where we need to spend the money. That's how you get taxpayer bang for your buck. Bring back Northern Powerhouse Rail quickly. Right, rant over. Time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. And I'm joined by the head of development at Belvoir Farm, Leanne Trundley, nestled deep in the Leicestershire countryside. This premium soft drink brand operates from the Vale of Belvoir, over 4,000 acres of farmland. Famous for its elderflower cordial, the family recipe stayed the same for over 40 years. And Belvoir prides itself on harvesting and collecting its own elderflowers, hundreds of thousands of tonnes of them every year, using local communities in Leicestershire, Lancashire, Nottinghamshire and Cambridgeshire. And it's not just cordial or elderflower for that matter. Belvoir's develops a wide range of products sold in supermarkets across the country. So joining us now, Leanne Trundley of Belvoir Farm, my latest guest on Money Talks. Leanne, great to have you in the studio. You are welcome. We drink quite a lot of this stuff in my family. The first thing we've got to talk about is the name. Now, it's spelt B-E-L-V-I-O-R. I've been saying Belvoir, but you've been grimacing at me.
Well, we don't really mind how you say it. So local people call it Beaver. So we're situated in the Vale of Beaver. But nationally, people refer to it as Belvoir, but we really don't mind how you say it.
In what world does B-E-L-V-O-I-R spell beaver?
It's French. It's a French word, so it actually...
Some weird Leicestershire thing going on that the rest of us don't know about. But seriously, it is a premium brand. It's very, very fine cordial. A lot of the products are elderflower, but you've got other ones. Ginger is a very popular one. How did this start? 40 years ago?
Yeah, so literally started on a kitchen table in our founder's house, kitchen table. John and Mary Manners started to make elderflower cordial for family and friends, and they were just making a few bottles, and then it got so popular that they decided to make it commercially. So they've been doing that since 1984. So we've literally, at the farm, we've just started our elderflower harvest yesterday. So our annual elderflower harvest, so those beautiful elderflowers are now in full bloom. And we invite members of the local community to come and help pick those flowers, and then we bring those flowers back to the factory where we infuse them to make our beautiful elderflower cordial that we have been making to the exact same recipe since 1984. And now we make more than 20 million bottles a year, and they go all over the world, so in more than 30 countries. So from that very small few bottles on the kitchen table, we've now turned into a global business selling our cordials and sparkling drinks in every continent, which is just absolutely amazing.
Now, does all your production go on in Leicestershire, or have you got other production units across the country? And do you only produce in the UK?
So yeah, we make everything in our Leicestershire factory, and obviously we don't just make elderflower, we make another range of drinks as well, so other cordials and sparkling drinks. So we make ginger beer, we make ginger cordial, when we bring in fresh root ginger and we slice it. The
ginger's it kind of tickles the back of my throat. It's quite spicy, isn't it? There's a lot of ginger in there.
It is a really, really spicy ginger, but literally we infuse the fresh ginger so we get all that beautiful flavour and all those citrus aromas and flavours from the actual ginger root itself. We rely on nature for our drinks and creating our recipes using real ingredients. We don't add anything artificial, no flavourings, no colourings, no preservatives and no artificial sweeteners. We really rely on the quality of those beautiful ingredients and fruit juices to make those fantastic drinks.
Now, you are a premium brand. You know that is the part of the market you're aiming for, and there is a cost of living crisis. On the other hand, you know, if you want a soft drink, the thing about buying a cordial is, yes, it might cost you a fair bit of money for a bottle of cordial, but most of what you're drinking is water, which comes out of the tap. It isn't free, but it's largely free. So I guess drinking cordials rather than fizzy soft drinks is, you know, that aren't diluted, could actually save you money in the long run. Is that the way you're marketing this in the middle of this cost of living squeeze?
Well, our drinks taste amazing, and the quality of the ingredients and the amount of the ingredients that we put into those drinks is fantastic, and they go a long way. So you get a lot for your money from the bottles. We've also identified a trend of people avoiding alcohol or reducing their alcohol intake, and so we've just launched a range of new drinks called botanical sodas. So we're a bit different to the drinks that we make currently. They're slightly lower in sugar, but still really full of flavour and really, really lovely ingredients.
Tell us about the harvesting. I mean, it sounds like a major operation. There's lots of land in Leicestershire where I mean, do you actually sow elderflower, or does it just grow wild? I know when I've made elderflower cordial with my family, we've just picked it on the hedgerows, if you like. But do you actually sow elderflower? Do you plant it yourself? I'm completely ignorant about the process.
So we do have our own elderflower field. So elderflower loves to grow wild. It's a wild plant. It really, really likes to grow wild in the hedgerows and in the bushes. So you'll see it at this time of year. It's absolutely everywhere, those beautiful white blooms. So yes, that's what we're inviting the community to help us pick. So we pick from our fields as well as the local hedgerows as well. And all of that comes back to our farm in Leicestershire where we make our beautiful drinks.
And do you sort of employ people on a casual basis, students, members of the community in the various counties that I mentioned in the introduction? Is it because that's what often happens in all kinds of farming, isn't it? There's a kind of itinerant labour force that's all roll up your sleeves, all hands to the mill, if you like.
Well, we invite the community to help us pick those flowers from our farm and the surrounding area. So we're very much about supporting the local community to help us to pick the elderflower that we need to make those drinks to go all over the world. So, yeah, we need a lot of help.
The government, not so much in recent weeks and months as the cost of living squeeze has really started to come to the fore in people's experiences, but the government in general in recent years has talked a lot about high fat and high sugar content of certain drinks. How do your drinks rank in that space, given that you're using mostly, I imagine, completely natural sugars?
Yeah, so all the sugar that goes into our drinks is 100% natural, and we offer choice for the consumer. So we offer drinks that do have a little more sugar in. Our new botanical sodas range is lower in sugar, so there's a lot less sugar and a lower calorie option. And our cordials as well, you can dilute them to taste. So our elderflower cordial in particular goes a really, really long way, and it still tastes absolutely amazing, even when you only use a tiny little bit.
It's obviously a very successful business, Liam, with the premium premium brand and so on. But how is the business getting on, given, I mean, so often here on The Money, we talk to business leaders. We've just been talking to egg producers, restaurateurs, cheesemakers. They're hurting. They all have very good businesses, but they're hurting because of increasing costs, increasing fuel bills. You know, businesses are suffering in terms of their cost base. They are suffering in terms of more taxation. How is Belvoir getting on in this environment?
Well, we're doing really well. We're growing. We're a growing business. We're a small family-run business, and we're doing really, really well. And our range of drinks is fantastic. They're all really lovely drinks, great, brightly coloured. So you'll see them on the shelf looking amazing. And we take pride in the recipes that we're creating. And I'm privileged enough to be able to help create those recipes. And the ingredients that we use are fantastic, really premium. So some of our drinks have really few ingredients in. So our freshly squeezed lemonade, for example, just has 3 ingredients in: freshly squeezed lemon juice, sugar and spring water. And our raspberry lemonade, another great flavour, just has 4 ingredients in. It's 100% natural. It's got beautiful raspberry juice, lemon juice, and some sugar and some spring water in it. And they all just look and taste amazing.
Do you think you can grow then during this really difficult period? People are predicting recession. Inflation's going up and up. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there. You think you can grow?
Well, we are growing, and our drinks are indulgent treats for people when they've had a really long day at work or a tough day at the office or wherever, and you come home and you want to reward yourself with something that tastes great, with no compromise, and you can sit and have a lovely glass of sparkling elderflower or one of the botanical sodas or even a ginger beer and have a nice reward for the day that you've had.
And how far could this go? Where are you selling Belvoir or Beaver, as we must now learn to call it cordial? Tell me some of the countries briefly where you're selling.
So we sell really well across the globe. So we sell really well in Australia and America as well as in Europe. So we're doing really well and growing in all of those areas, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think the quality and the premium taste of the drinks just speaks for itself.
Well, Leanne, it's been great to talk to you. You are from, I still got to call it Belvoir, sorry, I'm really sorry. Premium cordial brand. You're my latest guest on Money Talks, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
What an interesting company. Now, let's bring in some of your views on today's show. Paul emailed us at gbviews@gbnews.uk to say the government should immediately suspend all import tariffs on raw, unprocessed food. Good idea. Marion says, exactly. See what you did there. EGGSACT. Yeah, very clever. Prices are rising, and in some places are extortionate, certainly over and above our egg expectations. It's a laugh a minute on this show. And Bob says, people smoke, drink and go to the pubs. Yesterday, I passed a McDonald's and it was packed inside, and you should have seen the queue of cars at the drive-in. And still, people can't afford the basics. Let's get real. Peter says a pack of Tesco standard chicken drumsticks has increased in price by 35% from just a year ago. Yep, like eggs, chicken, a really important source of protein, particularly for lower middle-income households, getting a lot more expensive, not least because a lot of chicken comes from Ukraine. Michelle says, let's help ourselves by growing our own food where possible. That would require government and councils enabling it to happen, just for starters. And Peter says, amazingly, the estimated number of people in food poverty, just under 10 million, is almost identical to the 10 million tonnes of annual food waste. That's 1 tonne for every person, which again, coincidentally, is what the average person in the UK consumes annually. Criminal, with an exclamation mark. Thanks for your emails today. Really good of you to get in touch. Keep them coming. And that's all we've got time for here on The Money. Stay tuned, as Alex Phillips is up next with We Need to Talk About, and she's here in the studio. Alex, what's tickled your fancy today?
Well, not much has tickled my fancy, but we are going to talk about a lot of things that don't really tickle my fancy. One being Partygate. I mean, is Boris Johnson on a sticky wicket? At the end of the day, it's not going to be voters who get to decide for a while yet, is it? But it is going to be MPs. We've had a lot sneaked out ahead of the full Sue Gray report. Some pretty incriminating photography being released to newspapers and reports from those working inside Downing Street during Partygate. So the big question now is whether his own party is going to continue to back him. We're also talking kicking cats, something else that very much isn't up my street. And we are also going to be discussing how to get a good night's sleep, something I think a lot of us need to get some advice on. So lots coming up on the show.
That's Alex Phillips. After the break, you won't want to miss it. Good to see you, Alex. Join me tomorrow at 1 p.m. where I'll be looking at Ofgem's announcement of that energy price cap. It's expected to rise from just over £2,000 to £2,800 this October. Jeepers. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. A day of sunny spells and showers for most of us. Some lively downpours with thunder and hail in the south. But it does turn drier from the west later as a little ridge of high pressure moves in. However, it's the low in the North Sea that is driving the showers across many parts of the country during the bulk of the day, and those showers already getting going out there. Some lively downpours and hail and thunder possible for southern parts. It will be gusty in the far northeast, but for many it's light winds, and that means the showers will be slow moving. But also there'll be an improvement from the west later, increasingly sunny spells coming through. 18 Celsius in Cardiff, 19 or 20 in London, 16 for Belfast and Glasgow. Into the evening then, and we're going to see the showers continue for a time for eastern Scotland, eastern England as well. Eventually they die away, and then a slice of clear skies crosses the country. Eventually it's the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East that see the clear skies for longest, and here temperatures dipping into the singles figures, perhaps the low single figures by dawn. But in the west already by dawn, outbreaks of rain, a strengthening wind as well, so a wet and windy start for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England as well as Wales. The rain does move its way eastwards. It turns more showery through the day, and after a bright start, the southeast turns more cloudy with some light rain by the end of the afternoon. Similar temperatures to Tuesday, not far from average for the time of year, and it does brighten up in the north and the west by the end of the afternoon with a mixture once again of sunny spells and showers. But the showers fade away through the evening, so for many, clear spells again on Wednesday night, but with a keen breeze, it's not going to be quite as cool overnight. And then Thursday brings with it more rain or showers, another blustery day, but the weather settles down on Friday and the weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB